friend, she said the book was on her counter, and someone was looking and said, I didn't know you liked reading fiction. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, 50-50, that's a joke, right?
This idea that you can really renegotiate how things work in your own house, we get polar opposite reactions. Either, yeah, of course, either because people haven't actually gotten married yet, or for some people it is truly natural, not for me, but for a lot of people, or some people. But we also hear a lot of people say, you know, that's crazy, it's impossible, nobody does that. And what we really believe is there's a reality in between. It's neither obvious nor impossible, but it's all about building these skills. While we in our own lives, with little kids and working spouses, knew it was awfully hard, we didn't think it was impossible. And we set out, and as many of you know, we surveyed 1,100 working moms, and we talked to hundreds of men and women in dual career families, trying to get at the stories and the how-tos and the laughs of how dual career life is evolving.
We started this book saying, you know, we're not going to focus on the corporate solution, and we're not going to focus on the government solution. We're going to focus on the home solution because that's the area that we know. And I've actually come, over the process of writing the book, not just to believe that that's what we know, but that unless that changes, nothing is going to change.
Men aren't involved enough at home. They don't understand the need for the policy. So the conversation is first about the home front, because what we have found is that affects that big things in the workplace.
Sharing skills are super important. The couples in the US who share earnings and housework most evenly are the couples who have dramatically lower divorce, something like 50% lower divorce risk.
And this was one of his findings, was that men who did a lot more housework had a lot more sex.
One difficulty that a lot of women seem to have is if they're not making as much money as their husband, demanding that they are still treated equally at home, and vice versa, the men saying, well, I'm making so much more money than you, why should I have to be helpful? And that's actually pretty normal among the people that we talk to, and so helping each other to understand, helping men to understand that there's a lot of benefits to work aside from just the income, and helping women to understand that they're getting a lot of benefits other than the income, and that can be the only way to judge it, and something that once people understand that, it makes it a lot easier for them to have negotiations.
You know, I feel like I've had to help women feel like if your husband says no, that's just the beginning of the conversation. You know, that's not, you don't have to take it that seriously. You just that's just like opening up the talk.
It's much more interesting if you know, you can imagine tweaking the thermostat a little bit and not just an on-off switch. And that is just sort of a mental model that sometimes isn't out there.
But one thing that we talk about 50-50 is there's no boss. The man's not the boss and the wife's not the boss. So how do you make a decision if there's no final arbiter?
What I've realized that saying I'm wrong is the hardest set of words I have to speak in my house. But if I say them, everything gets really much better, really fast. It's sort of like, who remembers like Happy Days and Fonzie when he couldn't say I'm It's like that. Right?
One of the first things that I ask a couple when I meet with them is, so how are you contributing to this problem? If one of them can't tell me how they're contributing to it, that's a really bad sign. They say, well, I don't know. I mean, she just needs to change. That's a really bad sign. You know, if a couple can say, well, I know I can be really impatient, or, you know, I carry grudges, or I'm not very empathic, that's a good sign. And the more we can do that, the more our spouses want to be close to us and are going to care about doing some of this tough, in the trenches negotiation.
One thing that really helps is really putting down a list of everything that you're doing. Yeah. And if you really write down everything that you do, and then he writes down everything that he does, you can really see what it is, and you can see what you can split. Right. And the other thing you can do is figure out what doesn't need to be on the list. Show them the list, and you can say, look, this is what I am doing. Does this look fair? So I think in terms of complacency, one thing that we definitely heard from people was trying to set up a time, you know, once a month time, like you have a meeting at work. Yeah. You know, you kind of say, look, this is our meeting. We're going to review the past month and see what we can fix for the next month. And sometimes thinking of your relationship similar to a work relationship actually made things a lot more efficient. You can kind of take out some of the emotional discussion and try to make it a more factual discussion, and that's something that also is could be helpful. What we learned is the most important is that people are acknowledging that you can do it, right? That there's going to be a lot of challenges, there's going to be a lot of things, but you can make it work, and we can get to 50-50. We never have to to get there, that's hard to actually be there.